Lot 47, Arctic Light, silver gelatin print. Opening bid, 15. The room didn't move. They were waiting. Not for the bidding, for something else. For the moment when the auctioneer would gesture toward the donor in the front row, invite him to say a few words, make the whole thing feel personal and warm. Lumi did not gesture. She did not look at the man in the navy suit whose shoulders had gone tight the second she spoke the lot number. She did not acknowledge the way he'd leaned forward slightly, the way his hands had stilled on his knee. She simply smiled her professional smile and counted the seconds until someone raised a paddle. 18. 22. 28 on my right. Thank you. 32 in the back. The photograph was a study in restraint. A single lamp on a vast field of ice. The snow was so white it looked blue, and the lamp was so small it looked like a prayer. She'd stood in front of that image 3 years ago in Reykjavik, her breath fogging the glass, her fingers numb from the cold because she'd forgotten her gloves. Daniel had stood beside her, his arm around her shoulders, and he'd said, "That's us. Just the two of us, in all that space." She'd believed him. 45. 48. 52. Going once at 52. He was watching her. She could feel it like a weight, like a hand on the back of her neck. She kept her eyes moving, her voice steady, her smile intact. Going twice. She paused. The room held its breath. 58. Sold. The gavel came down. The room applauded. She said something gracious about the foundation's work, something warm about the generosity of the donors. She did not look at Daniel. She did not invite him to the stage. She did not give him the small, human mercy of being acknowledged in front of 300 strangers. The skipped step. That was the message, and everyone who knew anything about anything understood it. In the green room, after, she pressed her palms flat against the makeup table and watched her reflection breathe. She'd been so careful. 3 years of careful. 3 years of building a life that had nothing to do with him, a career that was entirely her own, a reputation that made people say Lumichin like it meant something. She'd walked out of that Brooklyn apartment with 2 suitcases and a rule: don't look back at the things you couldn't carry. And she'd kept that rule. Every single day. Until his name appeared on a donor list. She could have asked the foundation to remove it. Could have quietly swapped the lot out, pretended it was a scheduling error, kept the whole thing clean. She hadn't. She'd let it stay. She'd told herself it was fine, she was fine, she'd moved on. Then she'd put the photograph in the auction anyway. Then she'd stepped onto the stage in her green dress and watched him walk through the doors. She wasn't fine. She wasn't even close. But she'd learned how to look like she was, and that was almost the same thing. The champagne reception was in full swing when he found her. She was by the windows, talking to a silver-haired donor about tax deductions, nodding along with the perfect combination of sympathy and efficiency. She saw him approach in her peripheral vision, the way he moved through the crowd, the way people stepped aside without seeming to notice they were doing it. He'd always had that quality. A kind of gravitational pull. Lumi. She finished her sentence. Turned. Met his eyes for the first time at close range and felt her stomach drop in a way that annoyed her. Daniel. I didn't realize you were still here. She'd said it lightly, like she was greeting an acquaintance she just remembered. Thank you for your contribution. The board is very grateful. We need to talk. If this is about the donation, my assistant handles all post-auction logistics. I'll have her reach out. That's not what I'm talking about. She took a sip of champagne. The bubbles went down sharp, a small anchor to the present. Daniel. I'm going to be direct with you. If you're here about business, talk to my assistant. She tilted her head, let her voice go softer, more private. If you're here about anything else, tonight, you don't get to have that conversation. She'd chosen the word deliberately. Permission. He'd left without asking. He'd made a unilateral decision about their future, stood in her doorway with his suitcase packed and told her he needed to focus on his career, and she'd watched him go because what else could she do? Now he had to ask. She saw him process it. Saw it land somewhere in his chest and stay there, working its way under his skin. Good. I didn't expect you to make this easy, he said. Then you still don't know me. She turned away, stepped into the crowd, and left him standing there. The terrace was quiet. The noise of the reception faded behind the glass doors, reduced to a low hum punctuated by occasional laughter. Lumi leaned against the iron railing, the night air cool on her bare shoulders, and let herself breathe. She hadn't expected him to follow her. She'd hoped he wouldn't. Are you going to turn around? She didn't. I'm looking at the skyline. I'm not here to make things difficult. She laughed. A short, surprised sound. You're here. That's what's difficult. He stepped up beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth, not close enough to touch. Smart. Why was that photograph in the auction? She turned to face him. You know why. I'm asking you to say it. Because I wanted to see your face when you saw it. She held his gaze. I wanted to know if you still remembered. If any of it still meant anything. If it was just something you could donate and forget, or if, she stopped herself. Never mind. I remember everything. Daniel. I remember the night we bought it. Reykjavik. It was snowing and you'd forgotten your gloves, and I gave you mine because you said you couldn't feel the cold if you were looking at photographs. You stayed for an hour. I was half frozen by the time you were done. She remembered that night. Remembered the way he'd looked at her in the gallery's warm light, the way his breath fobbed in the cold, the way he'd taken her hand and said, "This is us." I took a picture of you, he said quietly. By the window. The snow was coming down so hard you couldn't see the street. You were laughing at something I'd said, and I knew. He stopped. Ran a hand through his hair. I knew I'd never forget that moment. Do you still have that picture? Yes. She didn't know what to say to that. She turned back to the skyline, let the silence stretch. I left because I was afraid, he said. I was afraid of how much I needed you. I was afraid of failing you. I was afraid that if I stayed, I'd find out I wasn't good enough. And now? Now I know I wasn't. But I think I could be. She looked at him. The city lights reflected in his eyes, and for a second, she saw the man she'd loved. Then she blinked, and he was just Daniel again. The man who'd left. 3 years is a long time, she said. I know. A lot can change. I know. People don't just, she stopped, started again. I'm not the same person you left. I can see that. Then why are you here? He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, because I want to meet her. The doors opened behind them. Noise spilled out, laughter and champagne and expensive perfume. Lumi straightened, adjusted her dress, became the auctioneer again in a single breath. We'll talk later, she said, and walked inside without looking back. She didn't see Claire coming. She was talking to a donor, making the right sounds, feeling the hum of the reception around her like a second skin. Then a woman's voice cut through the noise, too bright, too loud, too deliberate. Daniel. Are you going to introduce me? The room went quiet. Lumi turned. Claire Ashworth was standing a few feet away, champagne in hand, her smile just sharp enough to be a weapon. She was tall and blonde and built like someone who'd never been told no. I've heard so much about you, Claire said, and her eyes said none of it was good. The famous Lumi. Claire. Daniel's voice was warning. Not here. Oh, I think here is perfect. Claire swayed slightly. Her smile didn't waver. I just want to understand something. You donated that photograph tonight, didn't you? The one you bought for someone. Years ago. Was it her? The room was watching. Lumi could feel the weight of their attention, the hungry anticipation of people who smelled a story. She could also feel Daniel preparing to step in. Could feel the protective instinct rising in him, the urge to defend her. She didn't need that. She didn't want it. The photograph, she said, her voice clear and warm, has more than tripled in value since it was acquired. Which proves that good taste takes time to be recognized. I'm very glad we both had the opportunity to invest in it. She smiled at Claire. Not a challenge. Just a small, private thing, like she was letting Claire in on a joke. As for old accounts, she gestured toward the auction stage. Tonight's books are very clear. The foundation raised over $300,000 above projections. I'd say that's the best possible way to close any account, wouldn't you? She watched the words land. Watched Claire's smile flicker, just for a second, as she realized she'd been outmaneuvered without anyone raising their voice. A woman in pearls started clapping. The applause spread, rippled through the room like a wave, and Lumi accepted it with a slight nod, like she'd done nothing at all. Claire's face went through a complex series of expressions. Finally, she laughed. A brittle sound, but real. Well, she said. I see why he kept you around. Thank you. He always did have excellent taste. She turned away before she could see Daniel's face. She was waiting for a cab when he caught up with her. The street was empty, the air cold and damp with the memory of rain. Lumi stood at the curb, her heels aching, her dress glowing dark green in the orange light of the street lamps. Lumi. She didn't turn around. The auction's over. Call my assistant. I bought it back. She turned. He was holding a manila envelope. He held it out to her, and when she took it, her fingers brushed his. Inside was the donation certificate for the photograph. The recipient line had been crossed out, and in careful black pen, someone had written, Lumichin. Personally gifted. What is this? It's yours, he said. It always should have been. I left because I was afraid, and I told myself I was protecting you. I wasn't. I was protecting myself. I was terrified of being that important to someone, and instead of telling you, he stopped. Swallowed. I just left. She looked at the certificate. The paper was warm. She could see the imprint of his hand on the corner. You bought it back. I bid through a proxy. I knew you wouldn't let me win if you saw my paddle. I wouldn't have. That's why I didn't tell you. She looked at him. The streetlight cast shadows across his face, and she saw that he was nervous. His hands were in his pockets, his shoulders tight. He was waiting for her to say something. She didn't know what to say. Daniel. Lumi. I'm not the same person I was. I know. I can't just, she stopped. Start it again. I can't just go back to how it was. I don't even want to. That person, that relationship, it ended. I closed that door. I'm not asking you to open it. He stepped closer. I'm asking if we can build a new one. She looked at the certificate. At the photograph she'd loved, the memory she'd carried, the thing she'd left behind. You remember everything, she said. Everything. And what do you remember most? He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, the way you looked at me. Like I was the only person in the world who mattered. And I was so scared of that, Lumi. I was so scared of being that important to someone, because what if I couldn't live up to it? What if I failed? She looked at him. At the man who'd left her in a doorway 3 years ago with a suitcase and a speech. At the man who'd come back, not because he had to, but because he'd chosen to. I don't need you to be perfect, she said. I need you to be present. He nodded. Slow, like he was taking it in. I can do that. Then try. She tucked the certificate into her bag. Show me who you are now. Because I don't know that person. And I need to see him before I can decide anything. She hailed a cab. It pulled to the curb, and she opened the door. If you really want to start over, she said, you know where to find me. She got in and closed the door. The cab pulled away, and through the window, she watched him stand on the curb, hands in his pockets, watching her go. She didn't look back. But she smiled. The first week, he didn't call. She told herself she didn't care. She went to work, she ran the gallery, she had dinner with friends. She lived her life exactly the way she'd been living it before Daniel Hartwell showed up. On Tuesday, a package arrived. Inside was a first edition of a monograph on Scandinavian photography she'd been trying to find for months. The card said, I remembered. On Thursday, she was at her usual coffee shop when the barista handed her a white bag. Someone left this for you. Tall guy. Didn't leave a name. Inside was a pastry from a bakery she'd mentioned once, 3 years ago, that she'd missed. It was perfect. She ate it. She smiled. She didn't call him. On Saturday, she was closing up the gallery when she looked out the window and saw him across the street. He was leaning against a lamppost, holding coffee, not looking at her. Just waiting. She didn't wave. She didn't go out to talk to him. She locked the door and walked home the other way. That night, she got a text from a number she still had saved. I saw you smile. She typed back, you're not supposed to be watching me. I'm not watching. I'm remembering. She put her phone down and stared at the ceiling for a long time. Then she picked it up and typed, same time tomorrow? 3 dots. Disappeared. Appeared. I'll be there. 2. He showed up every night for 2 weeks. He'd sit in the corner of the coffee shop across from her gallery, pretending to work on his laptop, his coffee cold, his attention fixed on the door. She'd walk past the window, and he'd look up. She'd feel his eyes on her, a warm weight, a reminder that he was there. She didn't invite him in. She didn't stay late. She did her work, closed the gallery, and walked past his table without slowing down. Every night, he'd follow her. Not too close. Not too far. Just there, in her peripheral vision, a constant presence. She thought about telling him to stop. She thought about walking a different route. She thought about all the reasons this was a bad idea, all the reasons he'd left, all the reasons she'd built walls so high she'd forgotten what they were protecting. And every night, she'd slow down just a little. On the 11th night, she stopped. It was raining, the kind of rain that soaks through coats and plastered hair to faces. She pushed open the door of the cafe and found him at his usual table, architectural drawings spread across the surface, his coffee long cold. Lumi. He looked up, surprised. She saw something in his eyes. Not just hope. Something rawer. More fragile. She sat down across from him. I'm cold. And I want a hot chocolate. He stood immediately. Sit. I'll get it. She watched him walk to the counter. Watched the woman behind it smile at him, watched him smile back, watched him order 2 drinks and pay with cash. He brought them back, set hers down, and sat. What are you doing? She asked. Drinking a hot chocolate. Before tonight. For the past 2 weeks. What are you doing? He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, learning you. She blinked. What? Everything I knew about you was 3 years old. The woman I left wasn't the same person I saw on that stage. So I've been watching. Listening. Trying to figure out who you are now. And what have you figured out? He leaned forward. You're braver. You're more careful. You don't let anyone close unless they earn it. And you still bite your lip when you're thinking, which I'm told is a good sign. She'd been biting her lip. She stopped immediately. Did you want something? She asked. From that? From what? From telling me that. I wanted you to know I see you, he said. Not the woman I left. Not the woman I remember. You. Here. Now. She didn't know what to say. She looked at her hot chocolate, the steam rising, the foam perfect. You're different, she said. I hope so. Last time we were in a coffee shop, you were telling me you needed to focus on your career. He winced. I was a coward. You were scared. Same thing. She looked at him. I spent 3 years telling myself I was over you. That I'd moved on. That I'd built something better. She paused. But you didn't leave. You were there. In my head. In my choices. The way I held myself, the way I talked to people. Everything I did was built around not being that person again. Lumi. Let me finish. She held up a hand. I need to say this. I need you to understand. He nodded. I don't want to go back to who I was. I didn't like that person. She was too trusting. She gave too much. She didn't know how to say no. I learned how. I learned to say no to everything, because saying yes had hurt too much. She took a sip of her hot chocolate. The sweetness was grounding. And then you showed up, she said, and I couldn't say no. I wanted to. But I couldn't. And that scared me more than anything. Why couldn't you? Because I still loved you. She said it calmly, like she was stating a fact. I hate it. I hate that you still have that power. But I can't pretend I don't. And I've spent too long pretending. He reached across the table and took her hand. She let him. I'm not going to ask you to trust me, he said. I know I don't deserve that. But I'm going to show up. Every day. Until you can see who I've become. She squeezed his hand and let go. Okay. Okay? Okay. Show me. They started walking home together. Not every night, she kept some for herself, just to remember she didn't need him. But most nights, they'd leave the cafe together and walk the 10 blocks to her apartment. They talked about nothing. About everything. She told him about the artists she was discovering, the vision for the gallery, the nights she stayed up too late working because she couldn't bear the silence of her empty apartment. He told her about the firm, the buildings he designed, the exhausted joy of seeing something you'd imagined become real. They didn't talk about the past. They didn't talk about the future. They just walked, side by side, their steps finding a rhythm together. One night, she looked down and realized they were walking closer than before. Half a step's distance. Close enough that she could feel his warmth. Close enough that their shoulders almost brushed. She didn't move away. On the 15th night, they walked along the Hudson. The river was dark, the city lights glittering on the water. Daniel was telling her about a building he designed in Chicago, a structure that had won awards and changed his career. His voice was animated, his hands moving as he described it. She watched him. The way his eyes lit up. The way he forgot to be careful, forgot to perform, just talked about something he loved. Daniel, she said. He stopped. What? Your firm. The expansion. He looked at her, and she saw the shift in his eyes. The tension. What about it? They offered you a partnership, didn't they? Where did you hear? Claire mentioned it. She'd run into Claire at a charity event, and the woman had made a point of telling her. A warning, maybe. A test. When were you going to tell me? I was going to tell you tonight. Before or after you made a decision? He was quiet. Then, before. I would never, he stopped. I'm not going to make the same mistake twice. I don't believe you. He flinched. Lumi. Let me finish. She held his gaze. I don't believe you. But I want to. And I'm going to give you a chance to prove me wrong. What does that mean? It means I'm not going to tell you what to do. She stepped closer. I'm not going to ask you to stay. I'm not going to ask you to leave. I'm going to tell you one thing, and then I'm going to let you decide. Tell me. I'm here. I've been here. I'm not going anywhere. She looked at him, and her voice was steady. If you stay, stay because you want me. Not because you feel guilty. Not because you're trying to make up for the past. Stay because you want this. She watched him process it. Watched the war in his eyes. I need some time, he said. I know. Take it. He was gone for 3 days. 3 days of silence. 3 days of checking her phone and being disappointed. 3 days of walking past the coffee shop and not seeing him through the window. 3 days of telling herself she'd survive whatever happened. On the 4th night, she stayed late at the gallery. She was hanging a new exhibition, photographs of empty spaces, deserts, fields, snow. The kind of images that made you feel small and free at the same time. She was thinking about Iceland. About the lamp on the ice. About a photograph she'd kept in her apartment until she'd left it behind. The door opened. She heard footsteps. She turned. Daniel was standing in the doorway. His suit was wet, his hair plastered to his forehead. He was holding an old frame. What are you doing here? He walked toward her. When he reached her, he held out the frame. She took it. It was the photograph. The one from Iceland, the one she thought she'd lost. The glass was smudged, the frame worn, but the image was there, the lamp on the ice, the vast emptiness around it, the feeling of being alone and not alone. "I want you to have this," he said. "I need you to have this. Daniel. I'm staying." She looked at him. "What?" "I'm staying in New York." He took her hands. "I talked to the firm. They're going to open a New York office. I'll run it. It's not the partnership, not yet, but it's..." "Daniel." Her voice was sharp. "Stop." He stopped. "You're staying because of me?" she asked. "Because of us." "That's not..." She pulled her hands away. "That's not a choice, that's an obligation. I told you I didn't want that. I know what you said." He held her gaze. "And I've thought about it. Every single second of the last 3 days. And I'm not doing this because you asked me to. I'm doing this because I realize that the only thing that matters to me is being close to you. But your career. My career will survive. I'll build a new office. I'll find a way. But if I leave," he stopped. "If I leave, I'll spend the rest of my life regretting it. I've done that once. I'm not doing it again." She stared at him. Her heart was beating too fast. "Daniel. Lumi. I'm not going to make this easy. I know. I'm going to make you prove yourself. I know." 3 months, she said. 3 months of showing up. 3 months of being present. "If you mess up, I have the right to rescind permission." He smiled. It was the first real smile she'd seen on his face in 3 years. "I'll take it." "You're insane." "Probably." She took a step closer. Close enough that she could feel his warmth, close enough that she could see the shadows under his eyes. He hadn't been sleeping. "You're really staying," she said. "I'm really staying." "Why?" "B. Because you're the only person who's ever seen me," he said. "The real me. And I was too scared to let that mean something. I'm not scared anymore." She reached up and touched his face. His skin was cold, his jaw rough. She felt him lean into her hand. "I could still say no," she said. "You could. I could still walk away. You could. But I won't." She kissed him. And it was like coming home. She didn't let him stay that night. She walked him to the door, kissed him one more time, and said, 3 months. "Starting tomorrow." "Tomorrow," he agreed. "I'll be at the coffee shop." "I know you will." She closed the door and leaned against it, her heart racing. She felt like she just jumped off a cliff. But she wasn't falling. She was flying. 3. They started dating. It was different this time. Slower. More deliberate. They'd been through too much to fall back into old patterns, so they built new ones instead. Mornings at the coffee shop. Evenings at the gallery. Walks along the Hudson, rain or shine. They talked about everything and nothing, and every conversation felt like a discovery. Daniel showed up. Every time. On time. Present. He was learning her, and she was learning him. At the end of the first month, she caught herself smiling at her phone in the middle of a meeting. She'd never done that before. At the end of the second month, she gave him a key to her apartment. He'd looked at it like it was made of gold. "Are you sure?" he asked. Just don't lose it. I won't. You can only use it when I'm home. The probation period is still active. Understood. She kissed him on the cheek and walked away. He used it that night. She was making dinner when she heard the door open and saw him standing in the hallway, a bottle of wine in his hands. "You're early," she said. I wanted to help. She let him. He chopped vegetables and stirred sauces and made a mess of her kitchen, and she watched him with a feeling she'd almost forgotten. Happiness. The proposal happened on a Thursday. They were walking along the river when he stopped. The evening was warm, the sky a soft blue fading into pink. She turned to look at him. "Daniel?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Velvet. The kind that held things that changed your life. Lumi. Daniel. He laughed. A nervous sound. "Just let me say this. I've been practicing for 3 weeks. She crossed her arms, but she was smiling. "Go ahead. I left you 3 years ago because I was scared. I came back because I realized that being scared of losing you was worse than being scared of failing you. I spent the last 3 months proving to you that I could be present. That I could show up. That I was worth giving a chance." He opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, a single sapphire that caught the light. "And I'm asking you," he said, "to let me show up forever." She looked at the ring. At him. At the man who'd left and come back and become someone new. Daniel. Lumi. Permissions granted. He slipped the ring on her finger. It fit perfectly. "Does this mean the probation period is over?" he asked. "It means you passed." "And my reward?" "Your reward is my undying love and devotion." "Good. Because that's what I was going for." She laughed. He kissed her. She let him ask. He asked. And they both won. There are people who come back into your life not to remind you of who you were, but to show you who you've become. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is not to let them in, but to let them ask. He asked. She said yes. And the rest was theirs.
Subscribe to me for more content.